So I was really shaking in my boots initially because I was like, oh my goodness, they're all so. I mean, I've spent time even in Uptick, hearing from and talking about this stuff. But how do I talk about it? So I realized that information up here does not equal being able to talk about it. So, but this helped me really get 2020 vision, and I hope this will help us understand, differentiate, and then be able to communicate with our leaders and with our church where they fit in, what they are. So our parameters are the fence around our playground is 4 social contexts. So the first social context is the intimate space. This is your 2s and 3s, right? Where 2 or 3 are gathered. So intimate space, think counseling session, think spiritual direction. It can even be up to 5, but if you think of it in terms of 2s and 3s, it makes most sense. Intimate space, 2s and 3s. The next social context is the personal space. This is going to be 6 to maximally 12, although it's generally 6 to 10. And so your personal space, think book club, think small groups. This is where small groups fits in. These are your interest groups, the model airplane clubs, and you're able to be personally involved. If you're an outsider and you go into this, you'll feel awkward.
Because why 10 to 12 as the upper number instead of 13, 15, 19?
Yeah.
9.
That's a really good question.
Okay.
What I've gleaned is that number 15 until 19 is sort of a gray area. So that can be a small group, but it's sort of a gray area. It is all based on like social context studies where people feel awkward and excluded. Mm-hmm. And they feel awkward and excluded 6 to 12. So if it's a little bigger than that, hey, some people will just be grabbing a drink and they'll be hanging out, and so I don't feel awkward if I do that as well. Because there's a little bit more energy with over 12. There's a little bit more, and they're not quite as nimble either. Okay. And you're not going to be as intimate, of course. It's not. I mean, you're a big distance away. But that's a great question. All right. And it's up to 19. After 19 is our next one. This is our third social context, and that is your social space. This is also known as the extended family. And something that I almost forgot here is, in our context, because the task is also after small group, okay, what's huddles, right? Huddles are small groups because they're in that number, but they're specific small groups. They're investment groups. They're almost like a classroom, They have a purpose, and it's the huddle of leaders of something. Mm-hmm. So in order to, if somebody in a small group says, you know what, I really feel like I want to reach the Model Airplane Flying Club community. I used to be part of it, and I came to church, and then I have a lot of friends there, and I feel like God's calling me to them again. Well, then we huddle that leader and make them ready to then gather what will either be a personal space or maybe even a social space with the Model Airplane Club people. And this is your 20s to, the number gets a little fuzzy by some people. Mike Breen says 70, but he really quickly says it's usually not bigger than 50. But it goes up to 70 in suburban America, where there's not a lot of problems, and where you're hanging out washing your car and you're sipping on gin, for example. Like, then they can be up to 70, no bigger than 70. But that's sort of your extended family. They can even be that big, he says. Usually, think 20 to 50. And, this is interesting, in urban environments or in high turmoil or in tough economic places, they tend to be no bigger than 35 or smaller. So that extended family experience. We're going to come back to this one because this is the bread and butter. This is the missional community. And oikos is the same thing as missional community. Equals the same thing. It's the exact same thing. So that's this. Then your fourth social context is the public space. And this, of course, for all intents and purposes, is 70 plus. So your public space is your rock concert, is your worship service, is what, here's where it gets a little confusing. It's what a lot of North Americans call church. Public space. So your public space is 70 plus people, and it needs, anytime you have 70 plus people, it's really, think of a wedding. It's really good to have a wedding planner in order for things to go smooth. People need to know where they're doing, what they're doing, how it flows. So you will see another huddle, for example, in between social space and public space. You huddle leaders from missional communities to become staff members and have roles in a public space, for example, and huddle. And huddles are always those bridge that are active. They're always active because you're always huddling a leader. And it's also the place where leaders can speak their own language and help each other with burnout and stuff like that. So just to recap, and right now I've sent all y'all text messages as well, so you'll have this as well. But just to recap, these are the 4 social contexts in which we can understand and differentiate and then communicate. So small groups, right? Personal space.
So you have accountability groups as the first one too.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. So intimate space. Some churches globally have experimented with this. Not all. Especially our Catholic brothers and sisters in Europe are pretty big on this. The spiritual direction groups. They've even experimented with 4 and 5. I've seen even 6. So you're already on the edge there in a sense. But obviously, I mean, everything that has to do with humans is a little messy. But you have to do. So it's like group spiritual direction. But if you go 6 and or beyond, I'm noticing in my huddle of 6 where we can get really intimate, but not quite. Like I know with smaller groups it can happen. You can have that. It's your BFF, it's your spouse.
Right.
And you can have such high accountability, no control, high accountability, and that's where spiritual direction, counseling, really coaching thrives on that. But coaching also works in the personal space, and even coaching works pretty much in all these spaces. So that's how you can look at it and think of it. So missional communities, Mike Breen says this so well. Missional communities, and this is where this other clip is going to come in. Missional communities is what Americans are referring to, what he at St. Thomas in Sheffield, what they would refer to as oikos. Now, because he said when they took Acts 1, you need Acts 1 before you get to Acts 2, he always says. So read them both. You see that they're meeting in the temple and they're meeting in the oikos, which I think is really brilliant because I've always loved Greek philosophy. And as Sammy said ekos one time, and I thought about that, I hearken back to my education, and it's in everything. You put oikos, and logos together, you get ecology. So, the study, because thanks to the Greek philosophers, oikos is not just the place where is not just your kitchen or your bedroom or your restroom. Oikos is the planet. Your home. Your home is the planet. And so your ecology, right? Your knowledge of your planet,
So it's like
logos
your habitat,
and ekos, is, or even the management of it, oikos and nomos, economy. They're all connected because it has to do with our home, the planet, and our brothers and sisters. So this Greek philosophical thinking was what God used, obviously, to spread in the first, 300 years of Christianity, to get it to, Sammy, correct me here, was it 20 million by the time of Constantine?
I think that's right.
So from this small movement, right, after Jesus died, to 20 million, right, through the household. Now, this doesn't take away from the temple, which Mike Breen would say is the public space, of course. It doesn't take away from that because this is great, but the public space is like a rock concert or whatever is the best of. It's a production. You're putting it on, and it serves a purpose, and it reaches people, and it gives people hope, and it's very, 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 very good. 3DM uses the language of earthquake, and they take it from Hebrews chapter 12, verse 26, I believe, where they're saying that, and I'm paraphrasing here, I apologize, but where the Lord says that He shake the earth, and He'll shake it, but not, physically, He's going to shake it again, so spiritually. They use that in explaining where we are in North America right now. We've experienced a cultural earthquake, not just in America, all over the world. And because our God is a consuming fire, which is the end of that in Hebrews, what is happening in this cultural earthquake is that people have flocked to the spiritual refugee camps, aka the mega churches. So, which is not a bad thing because they find nurture, they find safety, and they find what they need for that thing. But the task at hand is to repopulate the villages and build them up again and to repopulate the landscape. And we do that through the extended family because that's how humanity's hardwired. That's if you leave a human alone, sooner or later they will find/build their extended family, which includes their own personal family, depending on how healthy that situation is, but also the people they work with /this and this. I have a video for that and this is thanks to Mike Breen, who showed me this one. This is a great example, and this will lead us also into just asking questions about stuff, but also there is, and this is Jen Hatmaker, there is a certain killer of missional communities or the extended family, for sure, and we'll talk about that at the end. But here.